Hi, part 2, you made it. Maybe you jumped ahead, I tell you. Please go back to part 1. Watch part 1. You gotta watch part 1. Does that make sense? Right? When you watch something on TV or a movie, it's always part 1 first, then you go to part 2. Well, it doesn't matter if you jumped ahead, no big deal. Let's have some fun here. Okay, so we're doing a teapot, and like we said in part 1, if you did decide to skip ahead to part 2, that's fine, no worries. We did a preliminary drawing first, a preliminary sketch, which was basically we took our teapot and we just got the basic shape of it onto our paper very carefully. We went around, but very lightly, super light. And we got our proportions correct, and we made sure that the handle was the right size. And we also made sure that our locations were correct with our top of our teapot lid. With our handle, we made sure that we checked our level marks, right? So we looked across and we used our pencil. We held our pencil out in front of us up in the air so that we could use this as our measuring tool. So we just hold the pencil up in front of us and we check and say, okay, well, if the top of the lid is here, how far down is it to the top of the handle? And we noticed it was about maybe 2 or 3 of these top of the lid, this small finial here. And so we said that was about 3 of those. And that was the top of the handle. Or actually it was more like 2. 1, 2, about here. And the same thing was with for the spout. So the spout was, so we just super lightly did a preliminary sketch, very incredibly light. Then we went ahead, once we did that, then we used that as our foundation and our guide, and then we did our contour drawing. So then we carefully, of course, we had our teapot set up across from us on some foam board, just like this piece of foam board, except a lot larger. This is a mini version of the foam board, taped together, and then on the table, and then we sit our teapot on top of this, and then we have a light on top, a little spotlight. It's like a desk lamp, and that's over here, like this, shining down. And we did our contour drawing, so we carefully went around, slowly, checked our angles. And in part 1, between part 2, I just did a quick look and got some of the more details as far as where the shadows are. On some of the more intricate spots on the teapot here with the handle, there are some areas where I wanted to just put a few little light lines to help me better understand when I'm going into paint. Does that make sense, to add those little lines here where the shadows are? So this way, if you add in those small little, you know, very light pencil lines where the shadow and the light are, you'll be able to capture that a little more easy when you're painting. If you paint a lot and you feel you don't need them, that's fine. Some people, I know some of you probably paint a lot without drawing so much. So some people that don't use a lot of pencil drawings tend to use their paintbrush almost as a pencil, so they kind of are used to working with their brush, and they are a little more careful with where they put their shadows and light. But I think it's always a good rule, if you feel like you need a little extra marks on your paper to help kind of mark out where your light and shadow are, definitely go for it. Make a really light, super light line. These are a little dark, but you won't see them. I personally like pencil sketches a lot, and so I don't mind pencil showing through the artwork. So I actually love that. So, but everyone's different. So Okay, so we're ready to start painting. Let's get into it and do it. And so we have fresh water here, a damp sponge just in case you want to check some water off onto the sponge first and then go into the paint. You can also just tap the brush a little bit on the container to check off a little bit of water before you go into the paint. And we have our miniature palette, which is a travel palette. And that's about it. And we just have good watercolor paper. This is Fabriano paper. And we're really ready to go. So let's start. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a darker background on the top of this. So I'm going to make the back of my foam board, which I have set up. I'm going to make the back part of the foam board so if the teapot is sitting like this, if the teapot's sitting here, I'm going to make this back part dark, like maybe a blue-purple color. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start out actually with some blue and purple, and we'll get some darks in here. And I'll add in a little mixture of some raw sienna too. And some cerulean. Now if you go with this dark background like I'm doing, you can fade it out. Now with this darker background, I will say that if you do this darker background, we're probably going to have to let it dry somewhat before we start painting in the rest of the painting. So be willing to take a break after you do your dark background here so that you can... Now here what we'll do though, with the darker background, we're going to go in and do some of the shadowing, because that actually looks really great if you can kind of tie in your shadow to the into the background. So let's do that. And it gets a little lighter over here with some more gold color, so I'll use some goldish color, and there is some and if you get to a point where you think something is not looking good or you might have went over a line, you can just pick up some paint with a tissue like that. All right, I got to keep moving here quickly. I want to try to keep this So I'm trying to keep this I want to keep that going there. The light and shadow, and again, if you have an issue, if you go over a line, no big deal. Alright, so that's looking really good. Let's get our shadow in. Here I like to do shadows quick. Darker toward the underside of the here is going to be darker, the paint. Shadow is darker closer to the object where the cast shadow is. Try to get in some other colors a little bit. And then here we have a shadow. I'm not going to tie it in right away with the okay, so that's so here I'm trying to carefully get the shadows there's some nice warm shadows here, gold color. They get darker here again. I'll let that go. I don't want to work over here because this is still quite damp, the background. So it's no problem. We'll just do a little splashing here. We can tie in this shadow. All right, we're doing well here. This is part 2, and we have so I'm trying to kind of work around here, and so here I'm going to change my water out quickly. That's always a good thing to remember. Change out your water when you're doing like lighter sections, lighter tonal values. That'll help to be able to get the lighter tonal values. And a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow ochre over here. Light's coming from this direction, so I'll use a little bit of cad lemon. Cad lemon yellow is good. It gives a feeling of light, warmth. Shadow areas. All right, so we're kind of we're getting there. And then we'll drop in some more shadows where we have shadows being cast on the side of the teapot. There's a little more there. All right, so this is pretty good. The best thing we can do now is we will let this dry, and we'll do the fine calligraphy here. So we'll do a little high-speed drying. We'll use a blow dryer, and we'll get some drying going here. Okay, so now we'll do some fine calligraphy here on our teapot, and I think we'll stick to our same color pattern. I don't think I'm going to go too far out of the colors we've been using here. I think it's better to just sort of stick with the colors we have, the blues and maybe some green. And my goal here is less is more, so I will try to make this very loose, free. I'm not going to so a couple really quick and easy flicks of the brush, and you can really, it looks much better than really suffering over trying to get every detail, so that's why I do it that way. And we'll take some red for the berries here, some alizarin crimson, some cadmium red, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. And that looks good. And there was a little bit of calligraphy here, so let's I'll add a little bit of cadmium yellow just to the if you haven't marked, you don't a little bit of wash, that doesn't look good. We tap it up a little bit with the brush. And that looks good. I think we have a good teapot here. I think it looks fine. And you could do a little more touch-up, but I think too much more touch-up on this one would kind of ruin it. So the effect is kind of loose. If, you know, a quickly done painting, that's just really getting the real basics of what we see. And that sometimes is all you need to have a really nice looking composition here to draw from. You can save this. We can save this. Does it make sense? We save this composition. We set it aside. We put it in a folder. And then if we, in the future, in a year from now, we're going to do a teapot maybe or something, we can just take it out of the folder and remember back to when we did this. And it'll kind of click back with us when we did it the first time. We say, oh yeah, that's right. I remember I did the shadows here and here, and I used, you know, the different colors, and you can kind of see the colors we used in the background here. So this is all great stuff to save when you do your small comps, and you'll have a lot easier time when you're doing your paintings in the future if you can refer back to your small comps you do now. All right, everyone, we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye for now.